legitimate to play here. And in those days, I think it was all very grey areas as to who could come from overseas and play.
Possibly he could have got a job working in an office if he was playing rugby union at the weekends, but because he was playing rugby league at the weekends, he might not have got a work permit.
Yeah, maybe not being on the sort of back page of a Yorkshire Evening Post would have helped as well.
He possibly could have kept his career under wraps a little bit more than celebrating him as much as they might have done. I just wanted to give people a little bit of a flavour of the type of things to expect from the book. So I've pulled a few quotes that are kind of from the early stages of the tour, just to kind of give people an idea of the rugby that they played, the challenges that they faced, and the fun they had along the way, because these kind of set the scene for them what the next probably 8 or 9 chapters of the book give you. So the first one I picked out was Al D. Kirkland. He said, we had no idea what rugby league was. Mike must have known that we were going there to play rugby league, but he didn't tell us. And following up on that, Joyce Kokorian said, Dad said, Joyce must be the daughter.
Joyce is, they called him Dad, as in, because she was with the children.
Okay. Dad said, we went over there and didn't know what the hell we were doing. We didn't know which way to run or when to throw the ball. It was ridiculous, but wonderful. And then Jack Benetti, another character from the story, he said, Mike may have played rugby himself, but very little. To me, it wasn't a problem playing league rather than union, because league was faster. We had no problem with the no forward pass reliever, because we did laterals in football, and playing offence and defence in football helped my rugby league, no question. If you'd played football, rugby league was not the least bit difficult. In rugby league, there was always 1v1 situations, and I like league more than union because of that and the speed. I mean, quotes like that stand out to us as rugby league fans,
absolutely.
don't we? They make us buy into these people and think they're one of us.
Yeah, it's a natural fit for them, as people have said for the last few years. It's a natural fit. American footballers can play it.
No pads, no downs. Or no pads, 6 downs, or however they solve it.
It's just the not blocking was an issue, I think.
Al Labadjian said, I played scrum half and wing sometimes. I loved it because we didn't have that kind of contact in football. But one of the main mistakes Mike made was he didn't have enough athletes in his team. You've got to have a lot of men to play that game. 18 to 25 games. You can't play with the number of men we had. We only had 14 decent players. The rest I would never have taken. So that quote, let's not expand on that, because that quote sets the scene for basically all the stories that then come around the games, which are so fascinating to follow. And then a final one I picked out, I think this is partly your words and partly quotes, but it says Jack's nickname was Lover, Fran Maundelay became the Burlesque King, and Bob Buckley was Mr. Gigolo. After 2 weeks at the Oceanic Hotel had enough. They took Dimitro's $500 and sent them on their way along the coast. And Jack Benetti said, there could well be some children of the All-Stars in Australia now. We were enjoying it too much. We had to move hotels.
It was described in one of the papers, they turned it into a brothel. And the guy said, and I mean, obviously you have to picture these chaps in their 70s now telling me about when they were in their 20s,
making sure their wives have gone out the room.
Well, when we had the launch party, the launch event at USC a couple of years ago, when the book came out in the States, we had a launch event at University of Southern California. It was fantastic because 5 or 6 of the players came, and I read some extracts from the book just as you have then, and Ed Demergian was in tears of laughter about reading, when I was reading about the girls banging on the windows and like trying to climb into the bedrooms, and there were a few wives of these players giving them very dirty looks, and I was panicking, thinking, I'm sure none of them were married at the time.
But they were all a group of in their sort of
early 20s,
and obviously athletic and good-looking men, and exotic to the people of Australia.
Who'd never seen met anyone from California, or Hollywood. Literally, Ted Grossman was from Hollywood, and went back to Hollywood straight after.
No, that's great, and I hope that gives people a flavour of the book, so they go out and buy the book if they don't own it already. Because I do want to let the people read the book themselves and get the full details of the tour stories. That's the main part of the book is the tour, particularly one in Australia and New Zealand, and then there's a France tour as well. But I do think it would be pertinent to skip to the end of after the tours to kind of the epilogue of the book, which is about the wrangling between the people in the US, Mike Dimitro and others, trying to get things off the ground, and then the RFL on the other side of this. And within the UK, there were probably 2 points of view in the game. There was Bill Fallowfield, who ran the RFL at the time, and then there was Harry Sunderland, who obviously the man of the match award at the grand finals named after. And Fallowfield was a cautious kind of person. He saw the US and tours involved in great. He was cautious, non-committal to it, where Sunderland was open to the huge potential of the sport in America and how it could grow. And it all seems pretty familiar, really, now. To
just change the names around, Mark.
Yeah,
change the dates, change the names. And, yeah, it's the last year or two encapsulated.
It's absolutely crazy, isn't it? Really, I suppose we have a little bit of people trying to want to get in there first, but you've got the optimists, the Eric Perez's of the world, and then you've got the kind of people with the cautious angle to it earlier this year. If we'd have spoken when we first planned on speaking, I would have been talking about the press conferences that Robert Elston did, and the cautious optimism that was being brought up constantly around that sort of stuff. Since then, obviously, we've had the More Sports International collapse, the Denver test take place and then be cancelled for the future, the implications that might have on the Rugby League World Cup in 2025.
New York v Tonga Australia Tonga in New York postponed.
Yep. Pretty much it was announced that it was happening and postponed in the same press release. It was almost the case. We've had the delays in the New York bid as well.
And all going quiet over Boston.
Yeah.
So in fact it's a quadruple, or whatever 5 is, whammy of American, not necessarily things disappearing off the table. I think some of them are going to come back. I know some of them are going to come back, but I think it's like the first years of anything. We're just overexcited, and this is going to happen, and this and this and this, and the cautious element, the Bill Fallowfield element, has come to the fore.
Although, arguably, understandably, after More Sports didn't pay their bills.
Absolutely. More Sports. When we were supposed to speak in July, and for various reasons didn't. And at that point, there was a line in the aforementioned 4020 that said.
Plug in 4020, of course, because you contribute to that.
I do contribute to it. And in fact, a line was added to my feature which said, are More Sports the new Mike Dimitro? And I didn't write that. But because something had happened since I'd written it, and clearly there is an element of Mike Dimitro to this. Not that More Sports are misleading anyone or anything like that, but the money wasn't there to put on the table. And as you might mention, there's so many opportunities that came after this tour, right up until 1970. I've written about the fact that the 1970 World Cup was all agreed was going to be in the States. Mike Dimitro just had to put money on the table, and he never did. In the same way that he tried to buy the San Diego Chargers but didn't have any money. The theme just comes back every few years.
And no one has any money in Rugby League now, so it is all very, very similar. You could almost write a sort of second epilogue to the book of what's happening right now and
absolutely.
Rebrand it.
You could, but I know for a fact that there are people with huge amounts of money floating around and seeing what's happening and waiting for their moment to get involved. And if they do get involved, we are going to be talking about this period as the start of something completely different, and a whole new world for rugby league, and
another cast of characters to get us there.
Absolutely. And what went before, what happened in the early 21st century, will be seen as 1996 to 2020 or whatever will be one chapter of the sport's history, and we'll be into the next one. But if those people are scared off, or the amateurish shambles that seem seems to submerge the sport the whole time. If that wins out, we'll look back at it as a series of huge missed opportunities, just like this was.
Do you think? Are you optimistic though? Because obviously you've got a close stake in expansion of the game. You're not from the north, but you love the sport. You support the London Broncos, who have
shocked everyone
this
me.
year. You're a big fan of expansion through the Toronto Wolfpack as well, and all of that. Are you optimistic, or are you concerned?
I'm optimistic. I think Toronto, London and Toulouse have all got better on and off the pitch for the last 2 or 3 years, year on year. And if you look at how they're going, you could make an argument for next year could well be Toronto v Toulouse in the Championship Grand Final. I'm not convinced London Broncos will be able to stay in Super League. I don't see it. As a fan of the club, I love the club, but it's tiny. It is absolutely tiny. There's half a dozen people working there. Had 600 home fans at the last game, 2 games ago. So we're talking about a club like not much bigger than Batley.
Yeah.
And if they were in Super League, everybody would be saying, oh my goodness, how on earth are they going to cope? So that's what we're dealing with. I know they're full time, but the potential is enormous.
Yeah.
It's just, when people say it's not worked, it's not been done properly.
Do you think if London realised its potential, it would help with the put impetus behind some of the American bids and from the big cities in America like New York, Boston, Philadelphia that have been talked about?
I think London getting promoted is hugely helpful. If Toronto were up as well, I think it'd be even better.
Yeah.
And they might be, given next year, I don't think it will do them any harm to have another year in the Championship. But there's, like I said before,
they might get to the Super League with ideas of realism rather than just thinking they'll win every week.
Absolutely, yeah. And fans who've now watched them win some, lose some, and the fact that there are very wealthy people, if they do get involved with these clubs, including London Broncos, you could take it to a completely new level. And we've seen with Melbourne, it took them 10 years. More than 10 years, best part of 20 years. They lost an absolute fortune.
More than we were allowed to.
Millions and millions every year. They've only just started to break even, and that's what you've got to do. You've got to be prepared to lose tens of millions. And if someone other than David Hughes, or as well as David Hughes, is prepared to do that, London could become a big player.
Yeah.
But I fear for them in their current state.
Yeah. And then just the idea of London versus New York is something that
not
makes
at
us
Ealing
all
Trailfinders
be very excited about a potential future. It's just whether there's a heavy dose of realism, because the New York bid is kind of probably the last thing to touch on in the conversation around the American game. And obviously when your book touches entirely on the international game, but now there's a greater focus on the club game, especially with the NRL running the world of Rugby League to an extent, and with the Super League clubs making their power surge, appointing their own CEO this year and those sorts of steps. So it's probably the club focus is maybe how the game can grow with what we're seeing with the Wolfpack. What are your feelings of the New York bid or Boston or any other? And do you think there's still momentum behind it now that it's been pushed back to 2020 at least?
Well, knowing the people involved in those, they're very different bids, and I know the New York one was a lot further down the line, and was the proposal was in, and then the chaos at the RFL nearly all year put the kibosh on it for now. But I'm pretty sure that will come again. We'll be looking, I guess, maybe at 2021. Hopefully 2020, but probably 2021. So
it'd be a good selling point to the new broadcasters for 2021.
Absolutely, yeah. But I think they need to have played before then.
Yeah.
But I think New York will happen, and I'm not sure Boston, or maybe it'll be Philadelphia. It could be Boston, you never know. But I think there's other
Hamilton, Montreal.
There's other teams. There's other teams in other cities around Europe as well.
Red Star Belgrade.
Well, yeah.
In the Challenge Cup next year, then
who are owned by Gazprom, the Russian.
Yeah.
Mr. Abramovich's mates. So I think we're in definitely in interesting times. Anyone who reads the book will see that in 1958, I think it was, San Francisco 49ers and LA Rams were discussing entering rugby league teams into a new North American competition, and BC Lions as well from the CFL. So we have been here before
and of course British Columbia is the only place to have produced a professional Canadian Rugby League player so far, isn't it?
So far, yeah. Quinn from Victoria, yes. But